Good morning, and we're pushing on 4.3, the market revolution. Okay, how did technology help to bring about the market revolution and lead to greater sectionalism within the nation? Okay, this is a word we're going to start to focus on, sectionalism. All right, the key there is sections. Basically, the country is going to start to become more defined by the different sections, by the different regions. You're going to start to see the North develop its own unique identity, separate from the South and separate from the West. These are the three big sections we're going to be talking about, North, South, and West. And the market revolution is really going to help to drive that change and drive those differences between them. Okay, we are going on with what we've been doing. So basically, I want you to identify and define in your notes immigration, nativism, WASP, cotton gin, textile production, mechanical reaper, and market revolution. And your question is, to what extent did the market revolution help define the different regions? So basically, how did the market revolution help bring about this greater sectionalism? How are the sections of the country going to start to be different? Okay, let's delve in. So the country is growing. We are no longer the tiny pipsqueak we were at the time of the revolution. The country is growing in leaps and bounds. As a matter of fact, by 1860, the start of the Civil War, we are going to be the fourth most populous country in the world. And we had grown from 13 to 33 states. So between the time of the Revolution and the Civil War, we're going to add 20 new states to the original 13 to make 33. We had 43 cities with populations greater than 20,000 people. At the time of the Revolution, there were a handful. And basically, the population is growing two ways. The population is growing both by immigration and by birth. So there's a lot of land, there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of economic opportunity in the country. So because of that, people are willing to have more children. And also, immigrants are going to be coming over looking for those jobs. And there's also going to be a lot of reasons which we're going to take a look into the immigration. So let's actually look at the immigration. All right. So here is immigration by decade. This starts in the 1820s and goes until about, what is that, 1900? Yeah, it goes into 2000. All right. So this is the story of immigration into the Americas. Now, if we take a look at the 1820s, around the time of the Era of Good Feelings, there's hardly any immigration at all. Okay, there's still some, but it's hardly any. And then it's going to peak up in the 1840s and the 1850s, beginning in the 1830s. That's the period we're going to talk about today. It's really going to spike around the late 19th century, and then it's going to go way down, and then it's going to come back up today. So, here's what we have to understand about immigration in America. This period right here, the first spike, is going to be German and Irish. This big spike right here is Jews and Italians, my people. This is a law because they didn't like my people coming. And then this is Hispanic and Caribbean. Okay? So that's going to be the big waves of immigration that we're going to see. So it's always a force in American culture. Immigration always exists in America. We are a nation of immigrants. Okay? Nobody is Native American unless you're actually Native American Indian, right? So we're going to talk about Native Americans and they were white. Well, no, you're not Native. Your family comes from some place. All right, unless you're 100% Native American, you are not. You are an immigrant in some way. 1830s and the 1840s, immigration is going to peak for the first real time since the Revolution, and that's going to be driven by Western land and Northern jobs. So the North is going to be industrializing, and that's going to create jobs that's going to be bringing people in. And that cheap land in the West. Land is a dream that most people want, so they want to go out and they want to get that land. That's going to drive a lot of people. And this is going to bring in a lot of people. Mostly Irish and Germans are going to come into this period. First, we'll talk about the Germans. Germans aren't going to be a big deal. Okay, Germans are white. You know, got to get that out there. You know, I mean, they did create the Nazis after all, so they're white. And the Germans that came over were also very highly educated. Most of the Germans that came over were more highly educated than the average American. Now, this is going to be an important thing. When we talk about immigration, a lot of times people have objections to immigration when the people that are coming in are low-skilled people. If people come in and they have skills, they have educations, then they're already going to be adding something to the economy. They're going to be coming in, setting up businesses. They're going to have good jobs. They're going to do different things. People don't mind people coming in when they have education and money. They mind when people come in that don't. So the Germans are not going to be a big deal. Germans are coming from 1830 to 1860. They're coming because the crops were failing in Germany, and there was also political unrest during this time. There were a lot of revolutions mid-century, and this is about the time when German unification is starting, and there were several wars leading into German unification. So a lot of Germans are going to move out because they don't want their kids growing up in that environment. And Germans are going to be better educated than most Americans, as we talked about. They have some money, and Germans are also going to bring their values with them. And one of their values was to start kids learning early. So they set up kindergartens, and they set up their own schools. All right, some move west to establish farms, but Germans are going to add to the economy. Most people don't like the Germans. Oh yeah, Germans also brought beer. So I'm just putting that out there. Next, the Irish. Okay, the Irish, on the other hand, people are going to start having problems with the Irish. All right, so if we take a look at this cartoon, we're stirring the pot of citizenship, putting all the new immigrants in, and there's an Irishman, and lo and behold, the guy's got a knife. Okay, this is the fear that a lot of people had. Why? Because the Irish that were coming over were not like the Germans. The Irish coming over did not have the education that the Germans had, and they did not have the means the German people did. The Irish that came over were poor, uneducated, and worst of all, they were Catholic. They weren't Protestants, they're Catholic. Catholics are Christians, however, they follow the Pope. And there was a feeling that, well, if you follow the Pope, how can you follow the President? And this became an issue. Just to give you an idea how big of an issue this was, in 1960, John F. Kennedy ran for the presidency and won. John F. Kennedy was the first Catholic president in the election in 1960 when he was running against Richard Nixon. His Catholicism came into question because would he be able to put the country first ahead of the Pope? So that was something. Why are the Irish coming? The Irish are coming in the 1840s because of the potato famine. The Irish were extremely poor farmers, and potatoes were an extremely cheap crop. And the potato, basically, there was a blight on the potato crop in Ireland, which caused the crop to fail. And the Irish people could not eat. They were starving, mass starvations in Ireland. It was horrible. So a lot of them, it was either leave or die. So more than 2 million Irish are going to starve during this time. And anybody that could is going to try to get out. All right. So most are going to mainly immigrate to the cities because they're too poor to go west. Most of the steamships come into the cities from Europe, so they come in here and they're going to stay in the city they came into. Most of them are coming into New York. All right. New York and Boston are the two big ones, and the Irish are going to go and they're going to be the factory labor force. All right. The big competition for those factory jobs, for those cheap factory jobs, are going to be blacks. So there's going to be a lot of infighting between Irish and blacks. As a matter of fact, during the draft riots, during the Civil War, it's basically going to be the Irish versus the blacks because they basically blame each other for taking each other's jobs. All right, sound familiar? Eventually, they're going to work their way up in the cities through political machines. They're going to find different jobs. Irish are going to make firefighters and policemen. That's going to be their big jobs. And in a lot of cities in the country, you still see a lot of Irish names in the police forces in the cities. All right, nativism. So just like today, how you got a lot of immigrants coming in that don't have a lot of skills. Now, granted, they make great Americans, and the Irish made fantastic Americans. Took them a while, but they came up and they learned the ropes. They got their foot in the door, and they worked their way up. But still, the Americans that are here are viewing the Irish coming in with suspicion. They see them as coming in to take their jobs and take their money. So the whites that were here, who called themselves Native Americans. Now remember, they are not Native Americans. They thought that they were the Native Americans, but eventually, their people came here from somebody. All right. Now they were white, Anglo-Saxon, which means British, and Protestant. Okay, so Northern European white Protestants, WASPs. That's what we call WASPs. When we say WASP, we're talking old white. Okay, there's different degrees of whiteness. And whites hate on other white. So when we got the old school whites, the British immigrants, they're looking at the Irish immigrants as something less than human. And then later when the Jews and the Italians came, they were even worse. So these white Anglo-Saxon Protestants are angry at the Irish coming in because they say those dirty Irish are dangerous. Remember the guy with the knife? And they're coming in and taking our jobs. Does this sound familiar? This is the same thing that we're going in today. And basically, they're going to ride a populist view. Populist is appealing to the people, but appealing to the worst impulses of the people. Okay? So the nativist, as they're called, because they believe they're Native Americans, viewed immigrants as polluting good American blood. I'll be damned if my daughter's going to marry one of them damned Irishmen coming in. Kind of like today, how there's a lot of hate going on there when you see different mixing going on. But guess what? This stuff is as old as time. And they begin their own political party. Not only was called the American Party, but because it was secretive, it was referred to as the Know Nothing Party. Because when people asked you, well, what do you know about that political party where they want to kick out the immigrants? Well, I know nothing. So that's how they got the nickname. They published books, they made some attacks on some immigrants, and they pushed for laws restricting immigration. They did gain some traction, but because the economy was growing so fast, immigrants were able to get jobs so easily that it kind of cut it from under them. It's not like today. One of the reasons why Trump's message resonated with so many people, and the nativists didn't in the 1840s, was the economy was doing well then. Today, the economy is not doing so well. So, when people are complaining that, well, those people are coming in and taking our jobs, back then there was some more meat on that bone. And people, when people are out of work, they were more. When people are out of work like today, they're more likely to support it. Okay, so let's talk about how the regionalism is going to start and how the sectionalism is going to start. All right, mechanization and regionalism. There's going to be a lot of new inventions that are going to be coming out in the early 19th century that are going to help to industrialize the economy. And basically, this is going to also lead to the sectionalism. Basically, here are the three big sections we're going to have to look into. All right, the factory system is going to be established in the north, leading to industrialization. Cultivation of cotton is going to take over in the south. Cotton is going to replace tobacco as the major cash crop in the 19th century. And that is going to help to solidify plantation and slave culture in the South. And agricultural production is going to step up in the West. Internal improvements are going to be slow, but they're going to be coming along, and they're going to help bring the country together. All right, let us begin by looking at the South. In 1793, Eli Whitney, who is a northern inventor, is going to invent the cotton gin. This is going to allow the separation of seed and cotton ball. Let's go to the internet. No, we don't want that. So let's take a look at what cotton looks like. No, I don't want that. That's what we make cotton into. This is cotton. Okay. So the stuff that we make most of our clothes out of, cotton, that is a crop that actually grows in the ground. Okay. But it was always very expensive to use because the seeds here, All right, there's seeds in the middle, and it's very hard to separate them. So it never really took off until 1793, when Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. Okay, this machine basically separates the cotton from the seeds, and that makes it a lot cheaper and easier to work with. Okay, so okay. So the cotton gin, here you see a couple of slaves actually ginning the cotton. The cotton gin is going to make cotton incredibly profitable. And basically the entire southern economy is going to switch over to cotton. Cotton is extremely labor intensive because cotton plants are about 2 feet tall, which means you have to haunch down, you have to pick the cotton bolls by hand, and they're very sharp, and it can cut your hands like it's no tomorrow. Also, you need somebody to run these machines. So because of the labor intensive process, they're going to double down on slavery in the South. Basically, a lot of people thought slavery was going to die out because it wasn't that profitable with tobacco cultivation after a while. So a lot of people were thinking that it's only a matter of time until slavery is done in the country, and it's not going to continue. As a matter of fact, in the Constitution, they abolished the importation of slaves after 1800 because they thought it was going to die. They thought it was something that was just going to go away. Turns out it didn't. And there's still going to be slavery, but basically it's going to be, if you're born into a slave. We just didn't take any more in. Slavery is going to start pushing further west. It's going to push into the lands of the Louisiana Purchase. It's going to push into Texas. The king cotton mentality is going to be established in the South. Basically, cotton was making the southern planters a ton of money, and that money was dependent upon slave labor. So the South is going to basically double down on the entire slave system, and they are going to oppose anything that remotely challenges it because the slave system is what's making them money by the truckload. So by 1860, the South is producing 400 million pounds of cotton per year, and that cotton is fueling the industries in the North and in Europe, because the textile mills were the first ones where cotton is actually going to start. Okay, let's go to the North. In the North, that's where you have the textile mills, the factories. Eli Whitney, again, is going to, he's going to pioneer the concept of interchangeable parts. Interchangeable parts is the idea that, well, if a part breaks down, the parts are standardized. You just go buy a new part. You don't have to buy an entire new thing. Okay? Kind of like cars. You know, your car breaks down, you don't have to go and buy a new car. You buy a new tire or a new battery because the parts are standardized. Well, that's going to help to create the basis of industrial production once you have the steam engine and everything. And Elias Howe in 1846 is going to invent the sewing machine. It's going to be perfected by Isaac Singer. Textile production is going to be the first major industry developing in New England, mostly along the streams of New England. You got to remember, the soil in New England is not very good for farming and for raising crops. But there are a lot of rivers that run very quickly, and those rivers are going to be good for producing power, which can be used to run machines. And the textile production is going to set up in the beginning, and of course they have a labor supply with the new immigrants coming in. All right, and there was a new concept coming out because during the Industrial Revolution, people are getting paid very low. So the concept of wage slavery starts to emerge. And basically the North has surplus people. So they have a lot of people. A lot of immigrants are coming in. So there are jobs, but there's a lot of people who are willing to take those jobs, and they're not very skilled. So basically that pushes wages down. You have factory owners that are going to pay people as little as humanly possible. They're going to work them as long as possible, and the conditions are going to be bad, and the wages are going to be horrible, and there's no such thing as a union. As a matter of fact, unions are illegal, and it was quite common to see children working. So basically, people are working very, very hard for very, very little. And that's going to continue for a long time. It's not going to be until the 1840s that Martin Van Buren is going to create a 10-hour workday. And in 1842, Commonwealth versus Hunt. Supreme Court ruled that labor unions were legal, and that's going to start the beginning of the unionization movement in this country. It's going to take them a long time, and unions are still under attack today, but that's going to be the beginning of making things better. Lowell girls. All right, the Lowell girls were women who worked in the Lowell mills in Massachusetts. They symbolized the working women of the age, mostly young women. They were working 12 to 13-hour days. They had to be supervised by a matron to ensure their good behavior. They were unmarried. There are poor conditions, but it did represent an opportunity. This is the first time that women can really work outside of the home to take care of themselves. And that's going to be a big step. This is going to be a big step into women taking the first steps towards independence. All right, let's go out west. In the west, it's going to be the agricultural region. 1837, Cyrus McCormick is going to perfect the mechanical reaper. That is going to allow farmers to chop down farm fields very easily. All right, it's going to allow for easier cultivation of very difficult soil. And basically the fertile plains of the West are going to be open to cultivation. All right, you have families that are moving out west. There's lots of land out there, and this is going to make it much, much easier. All right, so let's take a look here. Now, up north, we have all the factories. You see the textile mills. We have some more manufacturing continuing into the mid-Atlantic states, but manufacturing really peters out as we go south. You see some, but not that much. You have the corn and wheat belt here. That is in the west, and in the middle west, that is going to be the bread basket, right? That is going to be the area where everything's going to be production. Then you have the cotton belt down here in the south. Okay, we talked about transportation. We talked about internal improvements. There's only going to be a couple of things in internal improvements, such as the Cumberland Road, but most of these things are going to be done by the states, like the Lancaster Turnpike, which is the first major road in the U.S. The Erie Canal is going to be in New York. Endeavor, Robert Fulton is going to perfect the steamboat here in New York, which is why we have Fulton Street so many places. That's going to speed up water travel. Railroads are going to start to appear in the late 1820s and 1830s, and that's really going to start to stitch in mainly in the north at first. You have transatlantic clipper ships making for faster transportation. Samuel Morse is going to invent the telegraph. It's going to allow for more instantaneous communication between people. So basically the country is starting to take shape during the market revolution. You have a lot of forces that are working to shape the country and to grow it to what it is. So we go back. You have to identify immigration, nativism, WASP, cotton gin, textile production. I'm going to put one in. Lowell girls, mechanical reaper, in the market revolution. And your homework question, to what extent did the market revolution help to define the different regions of the nation? Hint, there are 3. Oops. Okay, there's your module. That is module 4 point, I think it's 3. And I hope you have a great day.